Howdy. No. What's up, fam? Hey, Journey students. Yeah, that's... Well, what's cracking? Nope. Hello there. All right, well, welcome back. We'll just get started today. Last week, we talked a whole lot about good habits. So this week, let's talk about bad habits. So whether it's biting your nails, whether it's daydreaming all day, checking your phone nonstop, always seeing if you have a text message or trying to get rid of those red dots. Maybe it's playing an addictive video game on your phone whenever you get a chance, or, I mean, the list goes on and on. We all have bad habits, and if you were to ask Caitlin one of my bad habits, I've gotten better, and very rarely do I do this, but there was a point where I would do a weird, obnoxious sound, A, to annoy her, but B, I just realized I just would do it randomly. And I'll demonstrate, so don't judge me, but it's so simple and so weird. A lot of you are now looking down on me, and we're like, I'm not listening to anything this guy is gonna say because that is weird. But that was something that I just caught myself doing randomly because it feels weird. And then Caitlin hated it, so I was like, oh, I can annoy her some. So it turned into this bad habit. But whether for you it's biting your nails or constantly looking at your phone, it sometimes might not have an impact on our spiritual health, but there are some bad habits that can prevent us from growing in our faith. And so let me ask you to do this. I'm going to read this list, and if this applies to you, that you've done it or you're currently doing it, I want you to stand. And just spoiler alert, probably everybody's going to be standing, so don't feel bad if you're the first one to stand. So if you are in this room and you've ever held a grudge, stand up. All right, so that was probably almost everybody, but continue to stand if you have someone that you know that you just cannot stand. Maybe you've stand up if you struggled to forgive somebody. All right, maybe struggled if you had to stand up if you struggled to ask for forgiveness. All right, maybe stand up if you sometimes do things that hurt others or yourself and you can't seem to stop yourself. Keep standing or stand up if you make time for movies or video games way more than you make time for God. All right, everyone can sit, and if you didn't stand at all, you're probably lying. Just kidding. But the Bible uses a term called sin to talk about bad habits that we have and that harm us spiritually. And it reminds us that we're all prone to make mistakes. We're all prone to come up with habits that can keep us from growing in our faith. And so we've talked about already how we can stretch our faith by making commitments, starting new habits. And so today we'll explore how we can stretch our faith by letting things go. And so last week we looked at Romans 12, 1 and 2, and we've been looking at this book, Romans, that Paul wrote many years ago. And the whole premise was he was helping us understand that salvation is through Jesus. And God's salvation doesn't just impact our eternity like in heaven. It affects right here, right now, our current lives. So last week we read the first part of this chapter 12. And I want to actually start there. I'm going to actually read it real quickly for you guys. And then we'll jump just a couple verses down. But remember what we said last week and what God's word says, Romans 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. See, what Paul is saying, what we talked about last week, is transformation is the goal. Following Jesus isn't just about a prayer that saves you and now you get to go to heaven. It's about stretching and growing in our faith until we do pass away or until Jesus comes back. As followers of Jesus, we shouldn't act or look like everyone around us because God is transforming us from the inside out. And only God can do that work. Only God can transform us. But there's things that we can do in our lives that help that transformation happen easier. So last week we read about a bunch of new habits that Paul said we could start, habits that could help us love people, serve people, and grow in our faith too. So let's actually look at what else Paul says about habits that we might need to let go or don't participate in. So pause this video, and I want you to read Romans 12, verses 16 through 21. And what I want you to do is after you read that, just quickly, for just a minute or two, talk about this. What is this passage saying, and what can I apply to my life as a result of that? All right, so Romans 12, 16 through 21, pause this video. So Paul in this passage gave us a pretty extensive list of verses that things we need to let go of in order to grow in our faith, like being proud. I don't know about you, but I fall into that category a lot. Being know-it-alls. I don't know if you personally do that or you know someone that thinks they know it all. I know I've fallen into that trap a couple times. Holding grudges. People do things against you and you hold it against them. And in honesty, that does more worse to you than it actually does to them. Looking for revenge. Maybe brother, sister, maybe friend did something and you're trying to pay them back for that. And then lastly, letting sin control us. Temptation, falling into temptation time and time again. There's a lot of don'ts in this letter that Paul is writing. And depending on your personality, this could do a couple things for you. Maybe you like being told what to do and what not to do. And as a result of that, it gives you clear direction and you're like, I'm cool with him telling me not to do this because that's how I operate. Maybe for some of you, you're the opposite. Like when you're told not to do something, you immediately want to rebel and do another thing. Or maybe even for some, you feel ashamed or you feel hopeless because you're not sure how to stop doing some of the things that Paul is telling us not to do. See, I've had to deal with, me personally, a lot of these bad habits over the year, but here's one thing I've learned about my faith is that if we want to grow, there's some things that we have to let go to because they're actually pulling us further away from God. So we have to let go of that and grab onto something else to help pull us closer to him. So once again, Paul said, let go of being proud. Let go of being know-it-alls. Let go of holding grudges. Let go of looking for revenge. Let go of allowing sin to control us. And in that place, Paul says this, grab onto humility, being humble, compassion, integrity, peacemakers, and goodness. And I don't know about you, but like even though this book was written thousands of years ago, I really feel like our world needs some of those adjectives, some of those things that we can actually encompass in our lives right here and right now, man. We need people that are humble and think about others more than think about themselves. We need people that are compassionate, that actually place themselves in someone else's shoes and says, man, like, I don't know what that feels like, but I want to understand and I want to sympathize with you. I want to have compassion for you. Integrity. People that will actually say and do what they say. Peacemaking. This is so important, especially right now with so much division in our world. We need people that are willing to reach across the table, have a conversation, and love one another and fight for peace instead of division. And goodness. People just need to be good and nice to each other and kind. And so Paul wrote this letter because he wanted us to see that his fellow Jesus followers grab onto what God wanted for them. But before we could do that, he knew that they had to let go of the harmful things that they are already hanging on to. It's like if you have a couple things in your hand, you can't grab something else. You have to let go of one thing to gain the other. And maybe one thing might not be that bad, but there is a better option. And so letting go of our bad habits isn't easy. It's actually really difficult at times. And so like on our own, we're not necessarily good at choosing what's good or right or helpful or Christ-like. But here's the cool thing. We're not alone. We as followers of Jesus have the Holy Spirit within us to help us. So if you know Jesus, this isn't a battle you have to fight on your own. God's Spirit lives within you and gives you the power to let go of those bad habits and gives you the ability to grab on to those good habits. And through Jesus, you can be transformed. So if you want to see your faith stretch and go stronger, the good news is that you can. What you have to do is detach from the habits that are pulling you away from God so that you can grab on to new habits that will pull you close to God. See, today what I'm trying to tell you is you can stretch your faith by letting something go. Letting one of those bad habits that's keeping you from growing in your relationship with Jesus, let it go and grab onto something else that could help you pull closer to Him. So each week of this series, we've talked about different ways, different commitments that you can make that will help you stretch your faith. And one of them was show up. Just show up. And so some of you, this is like your third week coming, and I applaud you. That's awesome. Like, thank you for being consistent and coming. And so that's my challenge to you. Next week when we're at Journey on October 4th, I challenge you to show up as we wrap up this series called Stretch. Maybe some of you need to make a commitment to Jesus. You've never made that commitment. And today you're feeling like, man, I'm ready to make this commitment. So I challenge you, if you want to follow Jesus, talk to one of the leaders in the room. Maybe if you're not ready to take that step, but you want to start that conversation, I'd encourage you to find a leader tonight and talk with them about that. Love God. Maybe you already love Him, but you want to grow in that love. If that's you, identify one thing that's pulling you away, let go of that, and choose to let go of it today. Love others. If you know you could work on loving people better, try to identify a bad habit that causes you to hurt or overlook or even put people in front of you, and then decide to let that go and build a new habit, and that one that allows you to love people and see them as God sees them. And then lastly, ask questions. If you're not ready to make any of these commitments, I challenge you, hey, that's okay. If you have questions or doubt, keep asking questions. There are many people in this room that have decided to follow Jesus, and they have some of the answers you're looking for, and they might not. And the cool thing is we can find them together. See, when we create an environment in this house group where people are comfortable to ask questions, that's the win. You feel like you belong and you have a place no matter where you're coming from. So we might not have all the answers, but we're excited to discover them with you. So that's my challenge to you this week. Hey, if you want to grow in your faith, maybe it's time to let go of something that's keeping you from growing closer to God and grabbing on to something new that will help you in your relationship with Him. Hey, thanks for joining us this week. And don't forget that next week we'll be at Journey from 4 to 6. We hope to see you there as we wrap up this series called Stretch. And then also sign up for our fall retreat. It's happening October 23rd through 25th, and they're already almost halfway full. So don't forget to sign that up, and we'll see you next week.